The junkyard was quiet as the sun began to set, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple. Joran wiped his hands on a greasy rag and leaned against the hood of an old, broken car. He had been at this place for years, fixing old machines, collecting scraps, and making a life out of the discarded. Most people avoided the yard. It smelled of oil, rust, and metal, and the piles of junk looked like mountains in the dim light. But Joran didn't mind. It was peaceful and it was his world. That evening, a soft, unusual glow caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a reflection from a piece of metal. But when he looked closer, the light flickered and pulsed, like it had its own heartbeat. Joran's curiosity pulled him toward a heap of old engines and broken machines. He carefully moved a rusty door aside and froze. There, curled up on a pile of old tires, was a small creature. It was unlike anything Joran had ever seen. Its scales shimmered in shades of green and gold, catching the last rays of the sun. Its tiny wings were folded neatly against its back, and a faint mist rose from its nostrils as it slept. The creature was small, no bigger than a large cat, but it looked alive with magic and mystery. Joran's heart thumped in his chest. He took a cautious step forward. The creature stirred but did not wake. Its chest rose and fell with soft, even breaths. Joran felt a strange pull in his chest, a warmth that made him want to reach out and touch it. He knelt slowly, keeping his hands visible so he wouldn't scare it. "Hey there," he whispered, his voice cracking a little. "Don't be afraid." The little dragon, because that was what it had to be, opened one eye. Its eye was a bright amber color, intelligent and curious. It blinked slowly, then looked back at Joran with a strange mixture of trust and caution. Joran's chest tightened. He had read old legends of dragons in storybooks as a child, but he had never believed they existed. And now one was here, sleeping in his junkyard. Joran didn't know what to do. The creature looked fragile. It could not survive alone in the junkyard, not without food, warmth, or safety. He reached out his hand slowly, and the dragon lifted its head, sniffing at his fingers. Its scales were surprisingly warm, and a faint vibration ran through its body as it purred softly. Joran smiled, feeling a connection he had never felt before. "I guess I can't just leave you here," he muttered. Carefully he lifted the dragon, cradling it like a baby. It wriggled a little but didn't resist. Joran found a corner of the yard where there was less metal and sharp edges. He placed the dragon on a soft old blanket he had been keeping for a project he never finished. The dragon curled up again, eyes half closed, and let out a soft, melodic sigh. Joran sat beside it, unsure of what to do next. He had never cared for an animal like this before. Its breathing was slow and steady, but he knew it needed more than just a blanket. He looked around, thinking of scraps he could use to build a small shelter. Boxes, metal sheets, and old tires could make a safe nest. It wouldn't be much, but it would keep the little dragon out of the cold night. Hours passed, and the sun disappeared behind the horizon. The junkyard grew colder and the wind carried a sharp chill. Joran kept watch, wrapped in a thick coat, his eyes never leaving the creature. The dragon's glowing scales gave off a soft light that warmed the corner. It was peaceful, yet there was tension in the air, as if the little dragon could sense that this world was dangerous. Joran whispered stories to it. Tales of brave humans, faraway lands, and adventures that seemed impossible. The dragon listened, tilting its head as if understanding every word. Joran laughed quietly at the thought. "You're smarter than I thought," he said. The dragon gave a small chirp, almost like a laugh back. Night fell completely, and the city lights twinkled in the distance. Joran could hear distant cars and the occasional shout, but in the junkyard, it was quiet and calm. He felt a strange sense of responsibility. He could not let anyone find the dragon, not now, not ever. People would not understand. They would see it as a threat, something to capture or destroy. Only he could protect it. As he watched the dragon sleep, Joran noticed that the creature's body gave off tiny sparks of light. They danced across its scales like fireflies in the dark. He had never seen anything so beautiful, so alive. His heart ached with a mixture of awe and worry. He named the dragon Ember for the soft, glowing light that reminded him of fire. The first night was long. Joran stayed awake, listening to every small sound, checking if Ember was breathing. The dragon occasionally moved, stretched, and flicked its tiny tail, but never left the blanket. By morning, a bond had formed between them. Joran realized that Ember had chosen him as much as he had chosen to protect it. From that moment, Joran knew his life had changed forever. The junkyard was no longer just a place of scrap and machines. It was a home for something magical, something that humans might never see again. And he would not let it be harmed. The sun rose and the city began to stir. Joran looked at Ember, now awake, blinking at the light. He smiled, feeling hope and fear together. He whispered, "We'll figure this out, little one. I promise." And for the first time in a long while, the junkyard felt alive, not with machines or metal but with the warmth of a new, unexpected friendship. Joran woke to a soft glow filling the junkyard. Ember, the small dragon, was already awake, stretching tiny wings and blinking amber eyes in the morning light. Joran smiled as he approached, careful not to startle the creature. "Good morning, Ember," he said softly. The dragon chirped, a sound like a tiny bell, and nudged his hand with its head. It was clear that even in a few hours, a connection had grown between them. For the first time in years, Joran felt he was not alone. He made breakfast for himself, scraping together old bread and canned food, while giving Ember bits of fruit he had found. Ember sniffed the food curiously and eventually pecked at it, tasting each piece with care. It seemed eager to learn, and Joran laughed at how carefully it explored everything around him. Days passed and their bond grew stronger. Joran discovered that Ember was more than just a small, magical creature. The dragon seemed to understand his words, reacting to his tone and gestures. When Joran clapped his hands, Ember would mimic the sound, flapping its wings excitedly. When he frowned, the dragon would tilt its head, watching him with concern. Joran had never known a creature so intelligent, so aware. He began teaching Ember small tricks. Using scraps from the junkyard, he built little obstacles and tunnels for Ember to explore. The dragon was quick to learn, weaving through the tunnels, leaping over broken pipes, and even retrieving small tools that Joran tossed. Each time Ember succeeded, it let out a soft, triumphant chirp and Joran's heart swelled. He realized that this dragon, though small and fragile-looking, had a mind sharper than many humans he had met. But the world outside the junkyard was not so kind. Rumors began to spread in the nearby city. People spoke of strange lights in the sky, unusual sounds and glimpses of something magical in the shadows. Some called it a spirit, others whispered the word dragon with fear. Joran could feel the tension building. He knew that hiding Ember would only be temporary. Sooner or later people would come looking. Despite this, Joran refused to let fear control him. He spent hours talking to Ember, sharing stories of humans, of courage and of kindness. Ember listened intently, occasionally chiming in with a small chirp or a puff of smoke from its nostrils. It was as if the dragon understood more than Joran could imagine. Sometimes, Ember would nuzzle against his chest, and Joran felt a warmth that went beyond friendship. This little creature had touched something deep inside him, something he had thought was lost long ago. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the junkyard, Ember began to glow faintly. Joran's eyes widened. The glow pulsed gently with the rhythm of the dragon's breathing, casting warm colors across the piles of metal and rust. Joran realized that Ember was not just magical in appearance, it had a kind of energy that seemed alive. The dragon's presence felt comforting yet powerful, like a force waiting to grow. The next day, Joran decided to explore the edges of the junkyard with Ember. He carried the dragon carefully as they walked past broken fences and rusted cars. Ember's eyes were wide with wonder, taking in the world with a mix of curiosity and caution. Every small noise made it twitch, but it never tried to run. It trusted Joran completely, and that trust made him feel responsible in a way he had never felt before. As they explored, they encountered stray cats, birds, and even a raccoon searching for food. Ember watched each creature closely, sometimes puffing tiny flames in excitement, sometimes tilting its head in curiosity. Joran laughed at the little dragon's reactions, marveling at its intelligence and playful nature. He realized that Ember was not just a creature of legend. It was a being capable of emotion, understanding, and loyalty. But Joran also knew that danger could come at any time. One evening, he noticed shadows moving near the edge of the junkyard. Strange figures moving quickly and quietly as if searching for something. His heart sank. Humans were coming, people who would not understand, people who might harm Ember to claim it for themselves. He crouched low, signaling Ember to stay close. The dragon, sensing his tension, curled up against him, its warmth a reminder of the bond they shared. Joran made a plan. They would need to be careful to hide Ember from prying eyes. He used old metal sheets and tarps to create a small hidden nook behind the largest pile of junk. Ember fit snugly inside, its eyes glowing softly in the dark. Joran sat beside it, whispering, "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe." The dragon chirped softly as if agreeing and settled down. Joran felt a mixture of fear and pride. They had survived the first test together, and their bond had grown even stronger because of it. Over the next few days, Joran noticed changes in Ember. The dragon seemed more confident, exploring further into the junkyard, testing its wings, and even experimenting with small bursts of fire. Joran encouraged it, careful to teach control. Ember learned quickly, understanding that fire could be beautiful but also dangerous. Watching the little dragon grow, Joran felt a new sense of hope. Perhaps humans could coexist with creatures like Ember. Perhaps there was a future where trust and care mattered more than fear and greed. One night, Joran sat under the stars with Ember curled beside him. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and the world felt both vast and uncertain. Yet, in that quiet moment, Joran understood something important. The bond between human and dragon was more than survival. It was a connection that transcended worlds, a reminder that kindness and courage could exist even in the darkest places. Ember nuzzled Joran's hand and he smiled. He did not know what challenges lay ahead or what dangers would come, but he knew one thing for certain: they would face it together. The dragon had chosen him just as he had chosen to protect it. And that bond, fragile yet unbreakable, was the beginning of something extraordinary, a story that would change both of their worlds forever. As the night deepened, Joran whispered, "Rest now, little one. Tomorrow we learn more about each other." Ember closed its eyes, letting the warmth of trust and friendship wrap around them both. In that moment, Joran realized that this dragon was not just a creature of legend. It was a spark of hope, a reminder that even in a world full of metal and rust, life could surprise you, and hearts could connect in ways beyond understanding. Joran had never felt more alert than he did that night. The junkyard was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that made every small noise echo like a shout. Ember slept in his makeshift nook, small chest rising and falling, glowing faintly in the dark. Joran had just settled on a crate, rubbing his eyes after a long day when he heard it, a soft hum, low and mechanical, coming from outside the yard. He froze, listening. The sound grew louder, a steady rhythm that did not belong to the city or the wind. Something, or someone, was coming. Joran's heart pounded. He had hoped the world would leave Ember alone, but it seemed the little dragon's presence could not stay hidden for long. Slowly he crawled toward Ember and shook the blanket gently. "Time to wake up," he whispered. The dragon stirred, blinking its bright amber eyes. Joran could see it sensed danger. Outside, lights flickered over the piles of scrap metal. Joran squinted, trying to make sense of the shapes moving through the darkness. Vehicles, strange and sleek, hovered just above the ground. Shadows of figures moved behind them, tall and stiff, carrying equipment that glimmered under the glow of the lights. Joran realized immediately, they were hunters, not human hunters from the city, but something more advanced, alien perhaps, with technology that could easily capture or destroy Ember. "Stay close," Joran murmured. He scooped Ember up carefully, hiding the dragon under his coat. The little creature's warmth pressed against him, and he could feel its tiny wings trembling. Joran knew he had to think fast. If the hunters found Ember, they would take it. There was no arguing, no reasoning. The dragon's life depended on him, and his wits. He led Ember through the maze of junk, moving silently between rusted cars and old machinery. Every sound from the hunters made him tense, every shadow make his stomach knot. The hunters were thorough, scanning every corner with beams of light that cut through the darkness. Joran's heart raced as he realized that even a single misstep could reveal them. At one point, a shadow passed close enough that Joran could hear a metallic footstep. He ducked behind a stack of tires, pressing Ember to his chest. The dragon hissed softly, a tiny puff of smoke escaping its nostrils. It was more a sound of fear than of firepower, but it reminded Joran that Ember could defend itself in small ways. He whispered, "Not yet. We wait." Joran led them to an old mech suit he had been repairing. It was broken, missing parts, but it offered space inside. He gently placed Ember in the cockpit, covering him with scraps of metal and fabric to hide the dragon's glow. Then he clambered in himself, crouching next to Ember. The mech could not move, but it provided a shield, hiding the small dragon from the hunter's scanners. Outside, the hunters moved closer. Their eyes, or what passed for eyes, scanned the junkyard with precision. Joran could feel the heat of their attention, even though they did not know where he and Ember were hidden. The small dragon stirred inside the cockpit, its glowing eyes peeking through the cover. Joran whispered softly, "It's okay. Just a little longer." A sudden noise, a falling pipe, made the hunters pause. Joran held his breath. One of them stepped forward, a long metallic device in hand. A beam of light swept past the mech, coming dangerously close. Ember flinched and let out a small puff of fire. It was instinct, not control, and the hunters flinched back, startled by the unexpected flame. Joran realized then that Ember's powers could be useful. Carefully he encouraged the little dragon, whispering, "Show them but don't hurt them too much." Ember puffed another small flame, just enough to startle the nearest hunter. The alien stumbled, confused and cautious, giving Joran an opening. He signaled Ember to stay calm and the dragon complied, hiding its glow once more. Using the distraction, Joran moved carefully toward the edge of the junkyard. He had memorized every path, every shadow, every obstacle. The hunters were thorough, but Joran's knowledge of the junk gave him an advantage. He led Ember through narrow paths, past piles of metal that would have been impossible for anyone unfamiliar with the yard. The dragon followed closely, wings tucked, trusting Joran completely. Suddenly, a light swept across the path. Joran froze. One of the hunters had split from the group, moving faster than the others. Ember hissed softly, sensing the threat. Joran held up a hand and whispered, "Wait." The hunter paused, scanning the area. Joran saw a pile of old tires to his right. With careful timing, he pushed a loose metal sheet, sending it clanging to the ground. The hunter turned toward the noise, giving Joran and Ember a moment to slip past. They moved faster now, adrenaline fueling every step. Joran's mind raced. He could not take Ember far. He didn't have the resources and the city was too close. But he could hide them temporarily, keep Ember safe until he figured out the next step. He led them to a small, abandoned warehouse on the edge of the yard, a place the hunters had overlooked. It was dark, dusty, and filled with old crates, but it would do. Inside, Joran let Ember out carefully. The dragon stretched its wings slightly, testing the space, then curled up near a pile of blankets he had brought. Joran sat beside it, listening for any sounds outside. The hunters had stopped their search for now, confused by Ember's clever distractions. Joran knew it was only a matter of time before they returned. He took a deep breath, looking at the little dragon. "You did well," he said. Ember chirped softly, nudging his hand. Joran smiled, feeling a mix of pride and worry. The dragon was more powerful than it looked, but it was still small and vulnerable. He realized that protecting Ember would not be simple. Danger could come at any moment, and the world beyond the junkyard was not kind. That night, Joran kept watch, sitting near Ember and listening for any sound of movement. The stars shone faintly through broken windows, but even their light seemed distant. He thought about the hunters, about the city, and about the fragile life sleeping beside him. He promised himself that no matter what, he would keep Ember safe. Together they had survived the first threat, and he knew that more challenges lay ahead. As Ember drifted into a calm sleep, Joran whispered, "Tomorrow we find a way to stay ahead of them. I won't let anyone take you." The little dragon purred softly in response, a sound that comforted him more than words could. In the darkness of the abandoned warehouse, surrounded by metal and rust, a human and a dragon prepared to face the dangers of a world that was not ready for them. Joran understood something in that moment. Ember was not just a creature of legend or a threat. Ember was a spark of hope, a bond between worlds, and a reminder that courage could grow even in the smallest of beings. And he would fight to protect that spark no matter the cost. Joran stayed awake long after the city lights faded into the distance. Ember slept beside him, small wings tucked tightly, but the warmth of the little dragon pressed against his side like a living heartbeat. He knew the hunters would not stop searching, and the junkyard was no longer safe. They needed to leave to find a place where Ember could grow without fear. The thought of leaving the only home he had known made Joran nervous, but he also knew it was the only choice. At first light, Joran packed a few essentials into a worn backpack. Food, water, and tools, enough to last a few days. Ember watched curiously, tilting his head and occasionally chirping softly. Joran smiled and said, "Don't worry, little one. We're going on an adventure." Ember's amber eyes seemed to shine brighter, and for a moment, Joran thought he saw a spark of excitement. They slipped quietly out of the junkyard, moving along narrow alleys and abandoned roads. Joran kept Ember hidden under his coat, but every so often the dragon would peek out, wings fluttering slightly as if testing the air. The city was waking up, people beginning their daily routines, unaware that a tiny dragon was walking among them. Joran felt a mixture of awe and fear. He had never imagined the world could be so large, so full of unknown dangers. As they moved farther from the city, the landscape changed. Crumbling buildings gave way to open fields, overgrown with tall grass and wildflowers. Ember chirped happily, leaping from Joran's arms to the ground and back, testing his strength and coordination. Joran laughed quietly, feeling a rare joy. It was the first time in years he had felt free, and Ember seemed to share that feeling. They traveled by night, resting during the day in hidden spots. Joran found abandoned barns, hollowed-out trees, and small caves where Ember could stretch his wings safely. Along the way they encountered other creatures, stray cats, birds, even a timid deer that watched them with wide eyes. Ember observed everything with fascination, sometimes letting out small puffs of smoke in excitement. Joran realized that the little dragon's intelligence went beyond instinct. Ember was curious, learning about the world in ways that reminded Joran of a child discovering life for the first time. One night, as they camped near a quiet river, Joran noticed Ember glowing faintly under the moonlight. The dragon flapped his tiny wings experimentally, lifting a few inches into the air. Joran's heart swelled with pride. Ember was growing stronger, more confident. But Joran also knew that with growth came danger. The hunters could detect the energy Ember emitted, and they would not give up easily. They encountered other humans during their journey. Most avoided them, but a few were kind and curious, offering food or advice. One woman, an old wanderer, noticed Ember and smiled. "A dragon, huh?" she said softly. "I've heard stories, but I never thought I'd see one. You two are brave." Joran nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. Not all humans were dangerous. Some could be allies, people who understood the value of trust and compassion. Ember chirped happily, sensing the approval in her voice. Joran continued to teach Ember to control his small powers. Fire, glow, and flight needed practice and care. The dragon learned quickly, understanding that his abilities could help protect him but also harm if used carelessly. Joran felt a sense of pride mixed with caution. Ember was growing, and with growth came responsibility. The journey was not easy. They faced storms that turned paths into mud, rivers that threatened to sweep them away, and nights so cold that Joran feared for Ember's warmth. Yet, through every challenge the bond between them grew stronger. Ember trusted Joran completely, curling against him when the wind was harsh, and Joran felt a protective instinct he had never known before. He would not let anything harm the dragon. One evening, after days of walking through dense forest, they reached a cliff that overlooked a vast valley. The view was breathtaking. Emerald trees stretched as far as the eye could see, a river winding through the center like a silver ribbon. Joran set Ember down, and the dragon's eyes sparkled with wonder. He flapped his wings experimentally, rising a few feet, then landing gracefully. Joran laughed softly, feeling both joy and relief. This place could be safe for them, at least for a while. Joran and Ember explored the valley carefully. Hidden caves, gentle streams, and high ridges offered places to rest and watch for danger. Joran noticed tracks of other creatures, small and large, but none seemed threatening. Ember darted around, practicing short flights and controlled bursts of fire, never straying too far. The little dragon was learning, and Joran marveled at how quickly he adapted to each new challenge. That night, as they rested under a canopy of stars, Joran thought about the journey ahead. They had escaped the hunters, but the world was still vast, still full of unknown dangers. Yet he felt hope. Ember was strong, clever, and loyal, and together they could face whatever came next. The bond between human and dragon had grown beyond simple survival. It was trust, respect, and a shared understanding that they were stronger together than apart. Ember curled against Joran's chest, warm and soft, a living heartbeat against his own. Joran whispered, "We've come far, little one. But the journey is not over. We'll find a place where you can be safe, and maybe one day, others will see the world like we do." Ember purred softly in response, as if agreeing. As the moon rose high, bathing the valley in silver light, Joran realized something important. The journey had changed him as much as it had changed Ember. He had learned patience, courage, and the power of trust. And he knew, deep in his heart, that humans could rise to greatness not through strength alone, but through care, compassion, and the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. In the quiet of the valley, under the stars, a human and a dragon shared warmth, hope, and the beginning of a new life. Together they faced the unknown, ready to continue their journey beyond danger, beyond fear, and into a world that might one day understand the bond between species, and the courage it took to protect something truly extraordinary. Joran woke to the soft light of dawn spilling into the valley. Ember was already awake, stretching his wings and letting out a tiny puff of smoke that glimmered in the morning sun. Joran smiled as he watched the little dragon move. In just a few weeks, Ember had grown stronger, more confident, and more curious about the world around him. But Joran knew this valley, though beautiful and quiet, could not be their permanent home. Danger still lingered, and Ember's future needed more than just hiding. They spent the morning exploring the valley. Streams of clear water wound between green hills, and the air smelled of wildflowers and fresh earth. Birds sang overhead, and small animals peeked out from the underbrush, watching Ember cautiously. The little dragon moved gracefully, hopping and gliding over rocks, practicing his wings, and testing his fire in controlled bursts. Joran laughed softly, feeling pride swell in his chest. Ember was learning not only to survive but to thrive. After a long morning of exploration, Joran found a high ridge that overlooked the valley. The view took his breath away. Endless forests stretched in every direction, and in the distance, mountains rose like silent guardians. Joran set Ember down, letting him fly in the open space. The dragon flapped his wings with joy, rising higher, then swooping low over the grass. It was the first time Joran had seen Ember truly free, and his heart ached with both happiness and the knowledge that this freedom came with risk. Joran knew that the hunters could return at any time. He had to make a plan, one that would keep Ember safe forever. He had learned through their journey that humans could be cruel, curious, or greedy, but he had also learned that some could be kind, brave, and wise. If Ember could live where humans respected him, perhaps there was hope for a better future. As they rested near the edge of the ridge, a soft rustling drew their attention. A group of humans appeared, cautiously approaching. Joran tensed, unsure if they were friend or foe. But these humans moved differently. They carried no weapons, only supplies, and their expressions were calm, curious, and gentle. A woman stepped forward and smiled. "We've heard stories of a dragon in these valleys," she said softly. "We want to help, not harm." Joran studied her carefully. There was honesty in her eyes, a warmth that felt real. He looked down at Ember, who chirped softly, sensing Joran's hesitation. Taking a deep breath, Joran nodded. "He's special. He's young and he needs to be safe." The woman's smile widened. "We can help. We know places where dragons like him can live freely with food, shelter, and protection. No humans to hunt him." Ember stepped closer, his amber eyes wide, wings slightly spread as if sensing the promise of safety. Joran reached down, stroking the dragon's scales gently. He realized that this was the moment he had been waiting for, the chance to give Ember a life he could never provide alone. It was bittersweet. The little dragon had become his companion, his friend, and leaving him was not easy. After a quiet discussion, they agreed on a plan. Ember would travel with the humans to a hidden sanctuary in the mountains, a place where dragons of all sizes lived safely. Joran would accompany them for the journey, ensuring Ember arrived safely and learning from the humans along the way. It was a new beginning for both of them, a chance to step into a world filled with wonder and possibility. The journey through the valley and into the mountains was long but peaceful. Ember moved confidently, guided by Joran and the humans, learning about new plants, streams, and wildlife. Each day, the little dragon grew stronger, his wings larger, his fire more controlled, and his curiosity deeper. Joran watched in awe, realizing that Ember was not just surviving, he was thriving. On the final morning, they reached the sanctuary. It was a hidden valley surrounded by cliffs, filled with lush forests, clear rivers, and safe nests for dragons of all sizes. Ember's eyes sparkled with amazement as he took in the sight. Other dragons of different colors and sizes moved gracefully, some flying, some resting, and some playing. Ember chirped excitedly, testing his wings and letting out a soft puff of fire that danced across the air like sparks. Joran knelt beside him. "This is your home now, Ember," he whispered. "You're safe here. You can grow, explore, and live freely." Ember nuzzled Joran's hand, a gentle gesture of trust and gratitude. Joran felt a lump in his throat. It was hard to let go, but he knew this was what the dragon needed. The humans guiding them nodded in approval, understanding the bond between Joran and Ember. They offered advice on how to help Ember settle in, how to teach him to live among other dragons, and how to respect his intelligence and independence. Joran listened carefully, feeling relief and hope. The little dragon he had found in a junkyard had a future brighter than he had ever imagined. After saying his goodbyes, Joran watched Ember explore his new home. The dragon moved with confidence, interacting with the other dragons, learning from them, and showing flashes of his own personality. Joran knew that Ember would thrive here, and he felt a deep sense of pride. The bond they shared would never fade, even if they were no longer together every day. As he turned to leave, Joran looked back one last time. Ember was perched on a rock, wings slightly spread, looking toward the horizon. The sun reflected off his scales, making him glow like a living ember in the valley. Joran whispered, "Good luck, little one. Fly high and stay safe." Ember chirped in response, a sound that felt like a promise, a farewell, and a thank you all at once. Walking away from the sanctuary, Joran felt a new sense of purpose. He had protected something rare, something magical, and in doing so he had grown himself. The world, he realized, could be a place of courage and compassion. Humans had the power to rise above fear and greed, to protect and cherish life that was different, extraordinary, and fragile. That night, as he camped under the stars, Joran thought of Ember. He imagined the dragon soaring through the mountains, playing with others of his kind, and discovering the vastness of the world. Joran smiled, feeling warmth in his chest. Their journey had ended, but their story, one of trust, courage, and friendship, would live on. For the first time in a long while, Joran felt at peace. He had faced danger, protected a life that mattered, and witnessed the growth of something truly magical. Ember was safe, and the world was a little brighter because of their bond. Joran knew that in a universe full of uncertainty, humans could choose to be heroes, not by force but by compassion. And somewhere high in the mountains, Ember spread his wings fully for the first time, soaring into the sky. His fire glowed brightly in the morning sun, a spark of hope that reminded Joran, and perhaps all humans, that even the smallest acts of care could change the world forever.